Welcome to one of your lessons for Lesson 5. You will see that in this particular week there are some different reading assignments. One of them is to read a very famous poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. This is a poem often used at graduation ceremonies, whether for college or high school, but I would also argue that it is probably one of the most misquoted or at least misinterpreted poems for that very same reason. A lot of people think that it is a good poem to say, choose the harder path, choose the one path that nobody else has taken before, forge your own way. And while there is part of that in this poem, I think it does neglect other aspects. So this is my way of just helping and assisting you as you read through the poem. You're not taking a test on this poem. You're not writing a paper on this poem, but you will end up doing a short quiz, and we are only calling it a quiz because that's how Brightspace classifies it, where you will respond to a random question that you're given, and you'll respond most likely through video unless your teacher indicates otherwise. And your responses are going to be somewhat general, like you're going to take aspects of the poem and you're going to apply them to The Alchemist or apply them to life in general, or talk about like the theme of the poem or the words and the tone within the poem. So let's dive in. This is The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. I'm going to read it to you, and I'm just going to point out some other things that I think are worth knowing as you read it yourselves. So because this is a poem, we can tell that there is some type of structure to it. It looks through the end words. It looks like maybe there's a rhyme scheme. Again, we'd have to dive in more to actually check that. It won't really matter for our purposes, though. But I can also tell that it's fairly short. And in poems, when you have like these paragraph-looking sections, in poetic terms, we call that a stanza. So this is stanza 1. Stanza 2, stanza 3, stanza 4. So only 4 stanzas. Each stanza is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in length, and thus we would have 20 lines. So that's just the structure of the poem. Again, that's above what we're doing right now since we're focused on The Alchemist and archetypes and fables and parables, but it's still helpful to know. Now, the other thing that I want to point out, which we did in a previous lesson, and you certainly learned in other classes, is diction is very important to authors and thus to readers. Diction is just word choice. So we want to point out words that we think are pretty important. We'd want to highlight those or underline them or circle them and be able to articulate, is this a positive connotation, negative connotation? What tone is it creating? And in turn, what theme is being supported through the tone and the word choice of the author? Especially with poetry, I like to say, because there's not that many words that are used and it's not a particularly long poem, we have to come to this poem with the assumption that every word matters. So let's dive into it. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. So you should be able to point out right away. You should be able to kind of put all that in your own words. It's a great poetry reading strategy. So we know that the speaker is declaring that there's 2 roads that are splitting off in a yellow wood. That's in a forest, right? Why is it a yellow wood? Well, it's a woodsy area. Yellow, maybe it's the season of the time, leaves changing, it's yellow. And the speaker expresses some form of lamentation. He feels bad that he could not travel both, and yet he's just one traveler. And he's standing a long time at this fork in the road. He's looking down one as far as he can, to where it bends in the undergrowth to where he can't really see it down the path anymore. Then notice what he does in stanza 2. Then took the other, again the other path, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim. So right now, you need to start asking yourself the question, what is this guy talking about? It seems like he's contradicting himself here. Right? He's looking at one of the paths in this forest, and he's looking all the way down it until he can't see it anymore. And then he looks at the other one and he says, hey, this is just as fair. Now, it's not talking about equality there. It's not talking about justice or law. In fairness, it's talking about how the aesthetic value of it, how good it looks, right? Just like in the old Disney tales and fables and things like that, it's the fairest of them all, right? We're not talking about equality there. We're talking about aesthetic value, meaning beauty and attractiveness. So he's saying he's looking at the other path, and it looks just as good as the first one he was looking at. But then he actually says the second one perhaps has the better claim. Maybe the second one is better. Well, what is it, dude? Is it just as fair, or is it better? And then it gives us rationale that it is better. He says because it was grassy and wanted wear. Now, that wanted wear is a little bit more archaic language there. It's not saying that it wants you to wear it out. Instead, it's saying that it is pristine. Right? It's very grassy, and it hasn't had anybody trample over it and wear it down. So it is grassy, and it wanted wear. Just an older way of saying nobody's walked on this path. So it does seem like this particular one, the second one that he was looking at, is better. But then he says, though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. So now we're in a paradox again, right? It seems like he contradicted himself again. In stanza 2, he said just as fair maybe has the better claim. So is it just the same, or is it better? And then here, he said they kind of warn about the same. Well, that's confusing because you just said that it has the better claim because nobody's walked on it before. It has wanted wear. But now he goes back against himself and is arguing with himself and says, actually, they're kind of worn out the same. Now let's look at stanza 3. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. So now it's at this point where we should be yelling at the speaker of this poem, being like, make up your mind. Is it a well-traveled path or not? Is it better or not? He keeps going back and forth. And this time, in stanza 3, he's saying they are equal in the amount of leaves that they had, that no step has trodden black. No steps have taken on this path. Nobody's ruined this path. No mud, no dirt tracks, nothing like that. They're equally laying there in the morning, and no leaves were walked on. And then he says, oh, I kept the first for another day. All right, so he wants to take the first one that he was looking at for another day, so that means he's going to take the second one, right? But then he says, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. So now he's contradicting himself again. He's like, you know what? I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to go down this second path, and I'll leave the first one for another day. But then he's like, you know what? Life kind of gets in the way at times. Things kind of happen. So I don't know if I'm ever going to come back. And then the last stanza. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. From long time from now. Maybe I'll be telling my great-grandchildren or grandchildren or great-great-great-grandchildren. Just a long time from now, I'm going to be talking about this. What is the this? There's a colon, so it tells us it's going to clarify what just came before. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. It sounds great, but again, we got to ask the question, which path did this dude take? Because we still don't know. He's left it very complex. He's left it very ambiguous. His diction is contradictory. The tone is also contradictory. And he says he took the one less traveled by. But if you recall, which one is less traveled by? Right? He said that the one wanted wear, but then he said actually they're worn about the same. And then he said that they're both equal. No steps have taken them. So he says I took the one less traveled by, and that made all the difference. But difference in what way? We don't know if difference is positive or negative. Even the word sigh, we don't know if that's positive or negative. You can sigh from contentment. You can sigh from sorrow, right? You're upset and you just sigh, or you're frustrated and you sigh, or you're really full after a great meal and you sigh. So without diving too deeply into this poem, this is really just an introduction for you to be able to do some analysis with this. It's getting you to look at the contradictory nature of what the speaker is saying. And yet, remember what I said at the beginning. There are a lot of people out there that will use this end, right? I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. You will see that sometimes in self-help books. You will see that sometimes in podcasts or YouTube videos of people trying to inspire others. And they might mean well by quoting this. They might not even know it's from this poem. But knowing what we know about the context of the rest of the poem, we don't know what the road less traveled by is. And so somewhere in there lies the meaning of this poem. Now, why are we doing this with The Alchemist? It's practice with diction, it's practice with tone, and there is some elements within the theme that are related to The Alchemist, because The Alchemist is going to be going on a journey, and at times he is going to have a fork in the road, and he is going to have to make a decision. Just like all of us do in life too. Some of you, you're getting to a point where you're going to get very close to having to decide what college you want to go to. And you might have multiple options. You might have a fork in the road of your future college decision. And you might have 5 different colleges. How do you choose the right one? Do you choose the one less traveled by, or are they all kind of similarly traveled? They all have their pros and cons. So how exactly did this speaker end up having his decision make all the difference? So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are. Your teachers will be as well. So remember, you will take a quiz on this. It will be a random question that you're given that you respond to in a video format unless otherwise indicated by your teacher. So best of luck to you. Read and reread this poem. Try to figure it out yourself. Look at the word choice. Look at the contradictions and the paradoxes that are presented to us by this speaker.